watched Critical Role, and I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. But, so what am I doing here? Don't worry, I'm going to explain, because I like genre, animation, and storytelling. But anyway, I see Critical Role trending on Twitter all the time when they go live. They've become quite the sensation. And I was wondering why Paramount didn't reach out to them for their own Dungeons and Dragons movie that they have coming out. But after seeing this show, I kind of get why. Don't worry, I have some very positive things to say as well. But anyway, this show only really has like one, or I'd say two problems. All right, so anyway, I thought I'd give this a whirl to see if it's just for Critical Role fans, who are of course substantial, or if anyone can tune in and enjoy. So, The Legend of Vox Machina is an animated series based on one of Critical Role's Dungeons & Dragons campaigns, and was funded by one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns of all time, which raised $11.3 million. Yikes, that's a lot of cash, and just speaks to the popularity of this show. So, Amazon, I'm sure, feels this will be a slam dunk, and I'm curious to see if it will be. I think it could. They really need to hire some writers, though. Anyway, Critical Role is an online show that airs on Twitch and YouTube, where a cast of well-known voice actors, even if you don't watch Critical Role, I'm sure you know many of them, or recognize them. They play Dungeons and Dragons, usually aired live, and while the campaign is created by the Dungeon Master, usually Matthew Mercer, the reactions of everyone else, their dialogue, their jokes, and the choices that their characters make are improvised on the spot. But Amazon's The Legend of Vox Machina is not improvised, but instead is based, I believe, on some of the dialogue from the Critical Role Vox Machina campaign. And I think not having this improvised on the spot makes a really big difference in the end product, because The Legend of Vox Machina, I really love the opening sequence. Didn't skip it once. It almost has it all. Great characters, great voice work, great settings, great animation, great story. But whew, the dialogue, at least in my opinion, comes across as pretty amateurish. And I think to some degree, I'm being quite kind with that description. Especially when you have shows like Castlevania and Arcane. It's not like The Legend of Vox Machina is breaking new ground here. Unless you count for the number of vulgar jokes told in a single episode, and even there, I think James Gunn might have beat them to that record as well. Danny McBride also did something very similar to this with Your Highness, crude bro humor in a fantasy setting. So this isn't new, so it has to be good. It has to be really good. It has some things that I think are that set it apart. Because I think when you remove jokes and character decisions being made up on the spot, that removes a lot of the thrill from what Critical Role does and what makes them unique. And I'm curious to see how Critical Role fans feel about this, especially since this is also a rehash of a story they already know. Is it as exciting watching it this way as it is watching it being made up on the spot? Right? Even if they were to animate a campaign you'd never seen before, I think removing that live feeling, I mean, live improv has worked as a television show, of course, on like Whose Line Is It Anyway? But that's because there are games at play that give that's true. They don't have the Dungeons and Dragons game structure here either. It's just a fantasy story. So when you remove the game, which you don't feel people are playing an improv game, and I guess Dungeons and Dragons is an improv game, then what do it's just a totally different thing. But while The Legend of Vox Machina is nowhere near the level of Castlevania or Arcane, it's not bad either, especially once you get past the first two episodes, which I have to say are actually pretty not great, but at least as a non-fan. Maybe for Critical Role fans, you'll have the thrill of seeing your favorite characters brought to life in animation, which will get you through those two. But I thought they were weak. But if you push through them, it actually gets a lot better, because Matthew Mercer's vampire, Silas Briarwood, shows up, the real big bad for the season, joined by his dark bride, Delilah, voiced by voiceover icon Grey Griffin. And this duo is a real threat. I'm not quite sure how our heroes are going to defeat them, to be honest with you, and that's awesome. And although some of you Critical Role fans might have some ideas, right? And I don't know, does that make it less fun for you? And we also start to get some character development for our leads. There's no character development in the first two episodes. The first two episodes remind me a little bit more of Kevin Smith's He-Man, and then it started to get Castlevania Castlevania-y. And that's when I felt it started to get much better. And to be clear, I don't have a problem with vulgar humor if it's funny. But here, I felt almost all the vulgar humor. They had some cute moments. There are some moments where I was like, that was pretty funny. But like 95%, maybe 90% of the time, it's not funny. I feel it's done for shock value, and I don't know if that works if it's not live. And also, I think it just leaned on vulgar humor too much as a crutch for the show overall. I'm like, you guys, that can't be all that you have. And I think as the show progresses, it's not. I do appreciate the diversity of sexuality in the show. Although, once again, in mainstream entertainment, bisexual characters end up in heterosexual-looking relationships despite teases to the contrary. But to be fair, the season is just getting started, and critics were only given the first 6 episodes. I believe the first whole season is 12. But they're just not aggressive enough in that space, considering what other shows have accomplished already. Now, as for diversity of ethnicity, I'm very surprised that such a successful show has really no diversity in this department. There is a king here in the background, basically, and a dashing soldier that shows up for just one episode. I was like, oh, a new character. They could really use him. But then he left. Maybe he'll come back. But I was like, that guy should be he should be a lead. Now, as for the main characters, here's who I really like. Laura Bailey's Vex is my favorite by far. She's clearly the de facto leader of the group, and she means business, but she's not without her charms and can, let loose as well. I loved her design. I thought she's just awesome. Loved it. I think it's interesting that she's flirting with Taliesin Jaffe's Percy, my other favorite character. I was like, of course they're a couple. A human gunslinger with a dark history with the Briarwoods. I want to know what's up with that smoke, too. He's your classic anti-hero intellectual, and I love those characters. I love them. I also think Marisha Ray's Caliph has potential. Think Poison Ivy, but add animals to the mix. At first, I was like, that's a Poison Ivy ripoff. But then I was like, it's fun. Especially because she can turn into animals. I thought that was a good twist on that and made her a little more unique. And I do like Poison Ivy. And then also there's Liam O'Brien's Vex, Vex's twin. And they have a will they or won't they flirtation going on. But again, I looked it up because I was like, I can clearly see a lot of romantic vibes between these characters. Let me go onto the Critical Role wiki and see who hooks up. It's also that kind of show. It has like that kind of like, soap opera quality to it as well. But I discovered that both these characters are supposed to be bisexual, although Caliph shows no signs of that so far. Well, Vex definitely flirts with a bear of a merchant, but, they don't go nearly far enough. It's very chaste considering what Castlevania and Arcane have already established in that kind of representation. I mean, I would really love for Vex to be a true bisexual character because we just have not had that in mainstream entertainment yet. And I think it's getting frustrating. I'm a very big believer, if you're going to open a door, you better go through it. Ashley Johnson's Pike has a great character design, but she's not given much to do in the first 6 episodes, and her vulgar moments don't seem to fit with the character. I mean, she's supposed to be like this religious character, so it seems odd to me that she would participate in the vulgar behavior. And I just, again, they're all vulgar, so at a certain point it just becomes repetitive. Then, as you can probably guess, I really do not care for Sam Riegel's Scanlan. Really dislike this character. He spews vulgarities constantly, and he's not funny enough or charming enough, in my opinion, to get away with it at all. He did have like 1 or 2 lines that I thought were pretty funny, but I think this character is like at a 15, and I really need him to bring it down to like a 7. He might be some people's favorites, though. Although I have to say that character is so over the top and so vulgar that he's really going to limit the Critical Role's ability to reach out to new audience members with this show because of that. Bottom line, 6 episodes in, I'm invested enough and I like genre animation enough that I want to see what happens. They got me. I'm in. So I will definitely, and probably quite quickly, because they're half-hour episodes, finish the season when it drops tomorrow on Amazon Prime. And this has already been greenlit for a 2nd season, and depending when it drops, I'll probably watch that too, because I really like genre animation. And I think some of the characters here are charming and interesting enough to have me stick around, even though they hang out with Scanlan. All right, so this is even though it's animated, this is one of those shows that's like definitely hard R. Hard R, definitely. All right, so that's my outsider's perspective of The Legend of Vox Machina, which again debuts tomorrow on Amazon Prime. I'm very curious to hear your own thoughts down below as fellow newbies and also hardcore Critical Role fans. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.